Good evening. My name is LaTanya Reeves, and I'm the chair of the Community Commission on Police Oversight. Before we begin, I want to offer a friendly reminder to all members, staff, and the public that these meetings are broadcast live to enable greater public participation. These broadcasts include real-time captioning as a further method to increase the accessibility of our proceedings to the community. Therefore, all speakers need to be mindful of the rate of their speech so that our captioners can fully capture and transcribe all comments for the broadcast. We ask all speakers to moderate the speed and clarity of their comments. At this time, I'm going to call to order this regular meeting for Monday, February 3rd, and ask the clerk to call the roll to verify the presence of a quorum.
Commissioner Shanfield.
Present.
Commissioner Newman is absent. Commissioner Clement.
Present.
Commissioner Smith-Kumian.
Present.
Commissioner Bastick.
Present.
Commissioner Stewart is absent. Commissioner Gurian-Sherman.
Present.
Commissioner Canaday.
Present.
Commissioner Williams-Johnson is absent. Commissioner Smith.
Present.
Vice Chair Olson.
Present.
Chair Reeves.
Present.
There are 9 members present.
Thank you. Let the record reflect we have a quorum. Commissioners, the agenda for this evening's meeting is before us. I'm not aware of any proposed amendments to the agenda, so let me ask if there are any amendments to the agenda from commissioners. Commissioner Gurian-Sherman.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to propose, before we get to that, if we could get a identification of the staff that are here. I think we had talked about that before, of making sure that's on the record for people who are viewing.
I would ask that we identify the staff once the agenda has been approved, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, yes. So given my motion is that we add on the agenda, I've sought to have it added. I was rejected 3 times. To have the killing of Allison Lucier, an update provided so that we can follow up on our unanimous motion in November. I undertook to do some follow-up. That's been completed. And we need to have an update on what the CCPO did and the status of the memo that was supposed to go to the City Council, and get a copy of the memo that was sent to the City Council. So that is my motion, to add that to the agenda. It's old business, so I assume it might go under the report section of the agenda.
So your motion is to add it. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been a motion and second. Any discussion? Commissioner Gurian-Sherman?
Yeah, I would just like to add, I think a lot of people are here in the audience today.
Commissioner, they can't hear you.
Pardon me?
Your microphone.
I'm sorry. There are a lot of people here today speaking in support of getting justice for Allison Lucier, for making sure that Indigenous women, and especially those who are victims of sexual abuse, are finally seen and not dismissed. Her case is so similar to Davis Muturi, where he was not protected by the police. He ended up being shot and very seriously wounded. The difference in this case is Allison Lucier was killed, and there's evidence to support that she may have well been murdered. And even though back in April, MPD promised to treat the case as a suspicious death, we haven't seen any results of that. So back in November, after yet again more public comment, we passed a unanimous motion to make sure that we were getting involved. I personally said I would undertake getting a letter written. It took longer than I thought, and I apologize for that. It was provided. It was sent to the chair. And I think we need to have an update, 5 minutes on the agenda, to find out what has proceeded, what the results are of that motion, and where we are with that.
Any further discussion? All right, seeing no further discussion, clerk, if you want to call the roll on the motion.
Madam Chair, to be clear, this is to adopt the motion to amend the agenda or to adopt the agenda as amended?
Amend the agenda.
Amend the agenda.
Amend the agenda.
Commissioner Shanfield.
I'm really hopeful that we'll get to hear from many folks in the audience during public comment. I'm not adding a vote to, I'm voting no.
Commissioner Clement.
Abstain.
Commissioner Smith-Kumian.
Abstain.
Commissioner Bastick.
Abstain.
Commissioner Gurian Sherman,
Yes.
Commissioner Canaday,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Vice Chair Olson,
Abstain.
Chair Reeves.
Abstain.
There are 3 ayes, 1 nay, and 5 abstentions. That carries.
Excuse me. Excuse me. Thank you. Motion carries. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
Is that where you need a second?
I'm sorry?
Is that where you need a second?
A motion first and then a second. You can motion.
I motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Second.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, clerk, call the roll, please.
Commissioner Shanfield,
Aye.
Commissioner Clement,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith Kooiman,
Aye.
Commissioner Bastick,
Aye.
Commissioner Gurian Sherman,
Aye.
Commissioner Canaday,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Vice Chair Olson,
Aye.
Chair Reeves.
Aye.
There are 9 ayes.
Thank you. The ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. Next, we have the acceptance of the minutes from our January 6th meeting. May I have a motion and second to accept that set of minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, please, clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner,
I had one comment. I'm
My
sorry.
apologies, Commissioner.
I just wanted to thank the staff. We had passed a motion to make sure that vacant seats are recorded in the attendance, and I see that in the minutes. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clerk?
Commissioner Shanfield,
Sorry. Yes.
Commissioner Clement,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith Kooiman,
Yes.
Commissioner Bastick,
Aye.
Commissioner Gurian Sherman,
Aye.
Commissioner Canaday,
Aye.
Commissioner Smith,
Aye.
Vice Chair Olson,
Yes.
Chair Reeves.
Yes.
There are 9 ayes.
Thank you. The ayes have it, and the minutes have been accepted. Next is the order of public comments. Comments. We'll open the floor to any comments from the public, giving each speaker 2 minutes to address the commission. We'll be taking speakers in the order they registered. If you wish to address the commission tonight and haven't already done so, you may register with the clerk at the side of the dais. If any speaker has printed materials, please give those to the city clerk. We also invite folks to submit written comments using the forms available from the city clerk to be included in the public record as an alternative to speaking at tonight's comment session. Each speaker will be given 2 minutes to address the commission tonight. We have a timer right here at the end of the dais to assist speakers in monitoring their use of time. With that, our first speaker tonight is Mark Anderson.
Madam Chair, a point of order. Could we get the staff identification and introductions?
My apologies, Mr. Anderson, if you could just hold off on just one moment.
Thank you.
I did want to make sure that we get the staff in the room to be able to identify themselves so people know who's here. So if the staff don't mind standing up and coming to the lectern and introduce themselves so everyone knows that's here. Thank you. Mr. Anderson, I'll just have you step to the side just one moment. Okay.
Oh, step
Yeah.
aside.
Russell Fujisawa, Office of Police Conduct Review.
Thank you.
Lieutenant Bryce Robinson, Minneapolis Police Implementation Unit.
Gavin Woodland, Health and Wellness, SME, MPD Implementation Unit.
Hi, Brendan LaFranchi, part of the MPD's Implementation Unit as a Senior Project Manager.
Kevin Carlisle, Minneapolis Police Department Implementation Unit Manager of Community Engagement.
Hey everyone, Lily Hastings, MPD Internal Affairs Case Manager.
Hello, Kristen Anderson, City Attorney.
Adam Szymanski, Assistant City Attorney.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for your patience. You have the floor.
Hello. Today we are here to discuss the case of Allison Lucier. Allison's story is one of heartbreak, neglect, and a fight for justice. As a cherished member of the Indigenous community, Allison's life was tragically cut short, and the response from the Minneapolis Police Department has left her family and loved ones grappling with unanswered questions. Allison endured a tumultuous and abusive relationship with Charles Chuck Foss, her on-again, off-again boyfriend, which led to several calls to law enforcement. Despite Allison's desperate pleas for help, the system repeatedly failed her From documented phone calls to restraining orders, her cries for protection were ignored and no meaningful action was taken. Tonight, you will hear about the timeline of her case, the lack of a response from the Minneapolis Police Department, the similarities of this case to the Maturi shooting, and the work that has been done leading up to this moment. On July 30th, 2022, Allison first contacted MPD about the abuse she was facing. A report was made with Officer Duncan of MPD detailing the abuse and torture that took place the day before. The following is an excerpt from that report. Lucier stated that last night around 1600 hours, Foss became very angry over a phone call that Lucier received from an unknown number. Lucier stated that Foss proceeded to grab her phone and threw it across the room. Foss then hit Lucier in the head with a closed fist. Foss then grabbed the phone and started to call the numbers that were on the phone. Lucier told me that every time a male answered the phone, he would hit her again. Lucier stated that Foss hit her more than 25 times. Lucier stated that the incident calmed down, so she made herself some soup. Foss proceeded to grab the soup and dump it over her head. Lucier proceeded to grab her by the hair and grab her and pull her into the bathroom. While in the bathroom, Foss used a chain and a metal wire hanger to tie her up.
Thank you. Janelle Ryland, and I apologize if I said your name wrong.
Well, in the bathroom, Foss used a chain and metal wire to hanger to tie her up. Foss used pliers to secure the chain and wire so that Lucier would not get out. Foss proceeded to kick Lucier in the chest area. Lucier stated that Foss said that if she made a sound, he would continue hitting her. Lucier stated that after tying her up and hitting her, Foss left her chained in the bathroom while he left. Lucier did not say how long she was chained up, but stated that Foss left for a while. Another incident on November 19th, 2022, officer reported to Officer Duncan the next day. The following is from that report. Lucier stated that on 11/19/2022, she went to the store and was gone a little longer than 30 minutes. She returned home, and Foss started yelling at her around 11:30 a.m. on why she took so long, bringing up comments that she was with another guy. Lucier and Foss started to argue about this. Lucier then stated that Foss backed her into a corner of her bedroom on the bed. Foss proceeded to hit Lucier with a closed fist in her face on the back of her head, stating, "Tell me a name." She stated that she gave Foss a fake name so he would stop hitting her. She stated that the assault stopped for about an hour and then Foss started assaulting her again. Lucier stated that Foss made her take off all her clothes, and while she was laying on her right side on the bed, covering her head and face with her arms to try to protect herself from getting hit in the head and the face. She stated that Foss proceeded to stomp on her, causing bruising to her arms and legs. Lucier stated that sometime during the assault, Foss zip-tied her wrists together. Lucier stated that she wanted to leave but couldn't and didn't try because it would only make things worse. She also stated that Foss held a razor blade to her lips, stating, "I should cut your lips off." Lucier also stated that sometime during the assault, Foss threatened to kill her, saying, "I should kill you and throw you in the river where nobody can find you."
Next up, Tiffany Jackson.
Okay. Lucia stated that she was very scared and in fear of her life during the assault. She has stated that Foss has been abusing her for a while now. Lucia stated that the assault occurred off and on from 11:30 hour to 1:30 hour. She said that Foss used drugs and believes he was on meth, and at the time it was this meeting with Officer Duncan that Allison inquired about obtaining an order for protection against Chuck Foss. It was also at this time that Officer Duncan checked the felony enhancement list and found Chuck's name listed. On June 28, 2023, the following was reported. Allison reported that she was sitting in the front passenger seat of Charles' vehicle driving to K&K scrap yard in which Charles was driving. Charles became upset with Allison and began physically assaulting her inside the vehicle. Allison reported that she was hit on the left side of the head with the backhand of Charles's right closed fist. Charles then began pulling Allison's hair. When she let go of her hair to punch her in the back of the head, Allison reported that she was punched in the left eye area. Allison's attempt to escape with no success. Allison remained in the vehicle with Charles, who continued to drive to K&K scrapyard. While driving with Allison, and Charles stated that he was going to kill you and throw your body in the river. Allison filed for an order of protection on October 23, 2023, and again on November 2, 2023. 10 days later, neither of these...
Next up, is it Dean Mosang?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Allison filed for an order of protection on October 23rd, 23, and again on November 2nd, 23. 10 days later, neither of these OFBs were served. Had they been, it's possible Allison would still be alive today. On February 13, Officer Stoltz and Officer Oak responded to a 911 call from Allison. The call notes were as follow. Upon my arrival, my partner and I made contact with the caretaker for entry. We went up to apartment 202 to speak with the victim. The victim was identified as Allison. Allison had stated that what had occurred in her apartment in 307 approximately 10 to 15 minutes ago. Allison stated that her boyfriend had knocked on her door and Allison had let him into her apartment. Allison identified her boyfriend as Charles Foss. When Charles had entered Allison's apartment, he started to claim that Allison had been sleeping with other men. Allison stated that she was not, and not seen Charles in a couple of days. Charles then hit Allison on her right temple with a closed fist. Allison then attempted to leave her apartment. That is when Charles got behind her and put his arm around her neck from behind her and stated that you aren't leaving me. After hearing this, I asked Allison if she would like to be seen by EMS and she declined. Allison was able to get away from Charles and made it to apartment 202 and they called 911. I asked Allison if she had gone unconscious at all during the incident and she stated that she did not. I also asked if Charles had squeezed her neck when he had his arms around her, and she stated that he did not. I asked Allison if she felt dizzy or nauseous. She stated no. I asked Allison if she had a raspy voice. She stated no. According to both 911 calls made to the MPD stating she had been choked.
Next up, we have Mohammed Bilal.
You got it? Got it. Okay, cool. Thank you.
According to both the 911 call made to MPD stating she was being choked and the account made by the caretaker, Teresa, stating that there was visible red marks on Allison's neck, this report of this incident in their records doesn't correlate to the call made that night. Despite the severity of the attack, no arrest was made. The officer then told Allison and the caretaker that if Chuck comes back, we will come back and we will arrest him. But you only have until midnight on February to do so, according to Minnesota Statute Section 629.341. On February 17, 2024, Allison arrived home shortly after midnight When approached at her door, she heard someone inside and knew it was Chuck. Afraid for her safety, she went downstairs to the neighbor's, Jen's apartment, and that's when Jen called 911. At 12:36 a.m., the same two officers that came on February 13th arrived at the scene. It was then that they found Chuck in her apartment and simply told him to leave. They reported he left without incident. The officer let him go, citing that it was beyond the 72-hour statute for probable cause arrest. Later that day at 5 p.m., Allison's sister, Nicole, texted her. Allison responded, I wanna, but I'm scared to leave. Chuck was inside my apartment last night, called the cops, and they just escorted him out. And now he's texted earlier, if I'm going to get him arrested, he's going to go to jail for something good. So I better watch my back. Nicole then asked why the police didn't arrest him. Allison reported because the protection order was done after 10 days. He must be sitting somewhere in a stolen car watching my house because I ordered a pizza, and he texted me and said, I'm lucky I was...
Mr. Blau, time's up. Thank you. Is it Voshland? Apologies for the mispronunciation.
He must be sitting somewhere in a stolen car watching my house because I ordered a pizza and he texted me and said I'm lucky it was an effing delivery guy. Nicole then made Allison promise that she would keep messaging her back, and Allison replied, if I don't, then no, he got me for real this time. 4 days later, on February 22nd, 2024, Allison was found deceased after a welfare check around 2:30 p.m. February 22nd. At that point, Minneapolis PD informed the neighbors that it was a suspicious death. An autopsy conducted by the Hennepin County Medical Examiner's Office found a subdermal hematoma on the left side of her head. Residual and non-lethal levels of meth products in her system, and presumed that she had passed on the 17th based on the decomposition of her body. Still to this day, MPD did not preserve any data or video recordings from surrounding businesses to investigate whether or not Chuck was in a stolen car stalking Allison the day she died. Nor did they locate her phone in her apartment on February 22nd when they found her deceased. Nor did they ping the whereabouts, some of the simplest evidence in gathering some of the simplest evidence for her homicide case. On March 1st, Sergeant Heyer, the homicide detective who was assigned to the case, contacted Jana Williams, Allison's aunt, about the case. In that conversation, Miss Williams asked the sergeant if he pulled the video camera coverage in the Cameron apartments where Allison resided. His response, why would I do that? Miss Williams also asked if they found her phone. The sergeant responded, they did not have it in their possession. The family, along with the Indigenous Protector Movement, the MPD Tribal Liaison, and MMIR's office in Little Earth, met with Commander Zimmerman and Chief Gadiers in mid-March. In that meeting, Zimmerman and the chief acknowledged that they received a 911 call from someone at the homeless encampment that they
Thank you, Mr.
reported.
Land. Danielle Borby?
Chuck Foss was telling people that he thought he hit her too hard this time and killed her, along with acknowledging they did not have her phone and had no idea where it was. The family learned sometime shortly after that Allison's phone was in fact taken away by Chuck Foss by a few anonymous women when he was telling them that he thought that law enforcement was monitoring it. That phone was turned in sometime after that to Sergeant Heyer. Meanwhile, the toxicology report came back listing the cause of death as subdural hematoma, manner of death undetermined. In no way was an overdose determined to be the cause of death. The MPD sent Allison's case up to the county attorney's office in early June of 2024. On August 21st, the family, along with Indigenous Protector Movement, met with Erin Lutz from the Hennepin County Attorney's Office. In that meeting, Ms. Lutz stated that Allison's subdural hematoma could have been the cause by hypertension and drug use. However, according to both the Hennepin County Medical Examiner and Dr. Jonathan Baines of Mayo Clinic, as well as everyone else in the medical field, that is a medical impossibility. Ms. Lutz also acknowledged that MPD did an incomplete job of investigating the case and therefore did not have enough evidence to make a case against Charles Foss to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. The case of Allison Lucier is remarkably similar to the case of Davis Moturi, who, as you know, was shot and hospitalized last October in a near-fatal hate crime, and whose case is currently the subject of an after-action review being conducted by the city auditor, Siddhartha Pudayal. The record is clear right from Mr. Moturi's emails to the MPD that he was being stalked, harassed, and threatened by Sachek. On October 17th,
Lizzie Palmer.
On October 17th, 2024, 5 days before Ms. Moturi was gravely shot by John Sachek, and 3 days after John Sachek pointed a firearm at Ms. Moturi, he wrote to Lieutenant Adam Lipinski, "This is about the 4th or 5th incident with a weapon I've reported, and probably the 30th time I called 911. It continues to get more and more violent by the day. I'm not confident in the pursuit of Sachek, given that Sachek attacked me. MPD officers had John detained, and despite an HRO and multiple warrants, they still let him go. What support is being provided outside of meaningless platitudes?" October 24th, day after being shot and left him in a hospital with a lost job, bullets and tubes in his chest, Moturi wrote to Inspector Nelson, "Do you mind explaining to me why officers under your command let Sachek go the last time he attacked me with a shovel? You blame me for the entire series of incidents with Sachek and stated that you place the safety and public image of your subordinates over my life. Am I not human like you?" In both cases, victim reached out to the MPD on numerous occasions, only for no action to be taken in protecting their lives. This is not the first time Allison's case has been the subject of public comment given to the CCPO. From 2017 to 2022, Global Rights for Women was called to investigate the MPD in regards to domestic violence. On August 7, 2023, the CCPO received a presentation from Cheryl Thomas, founder and executive director, and Ronna Martinson, JD consultant with Global Rights for Women, on its newly released report, an institutional analysis of police response to domestic violence. The reports are scathing and downright shameful to Minnesotans and specifically residents in Minneapolis. Stated in over 70-plus countries they've been called to investigate, no place was as bad as the MPD. On August 5th, Janet Williams spoke during public comment, previously reading the Global Rights for Women report, and found disturbing similarities made in this report of the MPD's lack of response to Allison both as a victim of domestic abuse and as an Indigenous woman. On November 18th, I spoke, requesting Allison Lucier, at the request of Allison Lucer's family, requesting that it be brought to the public eye, detailing many of the same facts and evidence discussed here. This resulted in a motion passed unanimously by the CSPO that night, requesting that Auditor Pudal investigate the death of Allison Lucier as part of the after-action review of the Moturi shooting.
Thank you. Jana Williams.
Hi. Tonight, you have heard the tragic timeline of her case, the lack of a response from the Minneapolis PD, the similarities of this case to the Moturi shooting, and the work that has been done leading up to this moment. Minneapolis PD wanted to sweep Allison's case under the rug. If she was an Indigenous woman struggling with addiction, her phone would have been found, and the videos from the surrounding buildings, and the evidence would have been preserved. Instead, it was not. The implicit bias is apparent in how they treated her death, and so I leave you with this. We are sick and tired of losing our friends and our family. The pain of Black and Brown and Indigenous communities suffer, and the burdens they bear are immense. It is a pain that most do not feel, a burden that most cannot carry. But even though we have all lost so much and so many, we will not give up. Our gathering gathering here today is proof of the power of the people. All of our communities coming together for a just cause. Understand this. We will continue to fight until we get justice for all of our missing and murdered Indigenous relatives. We will continue until we have justice for Allison. Justice is our demand. No peace on stolen land. Justice is our demand. No peace on stolen land. Justice is our demand. No peace on stolen land. Justice for Allison.
Next up, we have Lynn Anderson.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I am Lynn Anderson, Board Chair of Global Rights for Women, a nonprofit based in Ward 3. We are laser focused on ending violence against women through legal reform and systemic change. 1 in 3 women experience violence or domestic violence in her lifetime. Native women and women of color experience this violence disproportionately at 2 to 3 times more than white women. 87% of women are killed by a man they know, an intimate partner, or a male relative. Most of these murders occur in the home or private spaces. We are here today in support of Jana Williams' audit request and civil rights complaint for her niece, Allison. Allison was killed last February, which was 8 months after we, in partnership with the Minneapolis Domestic Violence Working Group, released our assessment of the Minneapolis Police Department response to domestic violence. As part of this assessment, we interviewed survivors whose experiences were routinely dismissed or minimized, no police reports filed, and gone on arrivals, and violations of orders for protection were not followed up on, putting women at even greater risk for their safety. This is ultimately what led to the death of Allison. Global Rights for Women made 7 major recommendations for improvement to MPD policy and practice. Had the recommendations offered in our report been followed, Allison would still be alive. It's too late for Allison, but it's not too late to protect other women in our Minneapolis community experiencing domestic violence. So we again implore you to do the right thing and act on the recommendations in our assessment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have LaCrue Dubois.
Good evening. My name is Lauren DuBois, and I am here as a member of the Board of Directors of the Madeline Kingsbury Startup Foundation. My friend Madeline Kingsbury was murdered by domestic violence in 2023 by the father of her children. She was missing for 69 days before her body was retrieved from a culvert. During this time, Allison's aunt, Jana, reached out to me in hopes that we could help spread the word of Allison's case. Maddie received her justice this past December of 2024. While I was not able to put myself into Madeline's case due to sequestration, I decided to use my time to delve in and familiarize myself with Allison's case. I was appalled to find the discrepancies within Minneapolis Police Department. I was appalled to see the amount of times that Allison had called and asked for help, the documentation and the proof that there had been violence against her. We're very lucky with Madeline's case that the Winona County PD acted swiftly. Within 24 hours of Madeline being reported missing under suspicious circumstances, they had police crews in the river, in the woods. They were obtaining video surveillance. They were obtaining interviews from neighbors, doorbell cams, and the community. When looking at Allison's case, none of that was done. And I cannot understand why a white suburban woman can catch the eye of the public and gain national traction, but the life of an Indigenous woman facing the same struggles does not. Why a police council or police department is able to look past all of the reports that Allison made. At the Madeline Kingsbury Foundation, we believe that no victim is less important than Madeline, and we believe that all voices should and will be heard. I am asking you to please act with urgency on Allison's case so it goes into the proper hands to be seen by the proper people so that she can too receive the justice she so deserves. Thank you.
Next up, we have Teresa Durst.
Hello and good evening. My name is Teresa Durst. I reside at 756 North 4th Street, apartment number 202. At the time, I was the caretaker who was quite possibly one of the last people Allison saw and communicated with. I was the caretaker there from February 2nd of 2020 or 2022 up to 11/29 of this last year, 2024. I have many experiences between her and myself as a caretaker, as well as a neighbor. When I was a caretaker, I was able to help her. I escorted her to our office to have her fill out the VAWA paperwork, to get information about what she needed to do to get her keys changed. Back in December of 2023, we did that. We got some keys made, but then back in February, I'm going to say, we needed to get it done again. She needed more keys. She couldn't always afford to pay the price of the key changes, lock changes. As a neighbor, I gave her permission to come to my door when she needed help. The first time I introduced myself to give her that permission was as she was sitting out on the front steps waiting for the police to arrive. She told me what had happened, and I said, anytime you need to get away, come knock on my door. I was there to answer the door on the 13th of February 2024. Oh, please, I'm just getting started. This is tough because I have information. This case cannot get closed. They don't have all the information.
Can I have you submit any additional comments and written comments, please?
I can give a statement to an individual of sorts at any time.
You want to give it right to the court clerk and then they can.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Please do not let go of this.
Next up, we have Crow Bellacourt.
Bonjour. Ondag Indigenous Cause, Chachagan Dudam. My name is Crow Belcourt. I'm the Executive Director of the Indigenous Protector Movement, lifelong resident of South Minneapolis. I grew up with Allison in South Minneapolis in Little Earth housing projects. I remember going to her home, singing with her stepfather on the drum. When I heard the passing of Allison, it broke my heart. I was out of town and I made it back. We marched from her residence downtown, and I heard her son speak, and he was recently incarcerated, and he's out now, and he's trying to get his life together, and now he has to deal with his mother being killed in a horrific way. And he has kids, Allison's grandkids, and all they want is answers. That's all they want is answers. They want the Minneapolis police to be transparent and let them know something, what's going on with their mother's case. And he gets nothing. So I'm here to stand with the family. I'm here to stand with my community, and we want answers. Miigwech.
Next up, we have Aaron Johnson. Aaron Johnson.
Hello, my name is Aaron Johnson. I'm filming a documentary about the encampments in Minneapolis. My film, They Sleep Among Us, is really focused on Camp Ninokasi. Last February, we started getting a lot of weirdos and threats, at that camp. This is an unhoused encampment. It's predominantly indigenous. And somebody burned down the porta potty. This was reported to the police at the 3rd Precinct. About 3 days later, the entire camp burned down. I have a disability, that's why I'm out of breath. But basically, I posted a video online. There was a suspicious, there was like a suspect with a red beret. There was supposedly gasoline canisters found. Police refused to investigate it. Excuse me. Thank you. Last month, I think there was 4 encampments that burned down last month, and 2 burned down 15 minutes apart, about a 10-minute, 5-minute drive apart. I personally found empty gasoline cans at that. I documented all of this. I've reported it to the 3rd Precinct. Nothing. They're not investigating anything. The encampment fire I was in, there was 50 of us in there. Luckily, no one died. These last 2, there was between 190 to 230 people displaced. All people that were in these encampments when they burned down. So that's potentially 230 counts of attempted murder. The police is just, they don't care. They didn't even search for these gasoline canisters that I found the next day while the camp was being bulldozed. The city was quick to just come in. Any possible evidence, they bulldozed it. That's what they do, and then they dump concrete. So, thank you. Check out my YouTube. There's more information about that on there.
Next up, we have Alyssa Washington. I'm saying it right, hopefully. Alyssa Washington. Okay, we'll skip them for now in case they went to the restroom. Next up, Kawakata LT.
Allison Lucier, Allison Lucier, Allison Lucier, Allison Lucier. For 5 centuries, every single government body and state body and city body has done a spectacular job of making indigenous people invisible and not heard and be missing. We owe it to Allison Lucier for not looking into this case, and the police department is not to be trusted. They have a history of making indigenous relatives disappear in the railroad tracks back in the 70s. Allison Lucier, Allison Lucier, Allison Lucier, Allison Lucier. We owe it to her. I owe it to her to speak her name so she is not invisible and she's not made unheard. If you were hurt, murdered, or raped, or murdered, or raped, any of you women, you do not want to trust the police department. They are not to be trusted. If your grandmother was hurt, or raped, or murdered, the police department is not to be trusted. You have to be on top of them. If your great-great-grandmother, if your daughter, or your child, they are not to be trusted. You owe it to Allison Lucier. You owe it to Allison Lucier. Just look at that seal you sit in front of. Indigenous people are invisible there. They're not even on that seal. You do a fantastic job of making natives invisible and unheard. You owe it to Allison Lucier, Allison Lucier, Allison Lucier, Allison Lucier. You owe it to her. You owe it to her family, and you owe it to all our Native relatives. You owe it because for 5 centuries it's been an attack on the feminine. Every single feminine abuse and assault is as a result of negligence.
Excuse me, my microphone wasn't on. Next up, we have Amarthini Keefe. Ms. Washington?
Hello, everyone. My name is Alyssa Washington, founder of the Wrongfully Incarcerated and Over-Sentenced Families Council, Minnesota. Today, I want to address the tragic murder of Allison Lucier and the Minneapolis Police Department's inadequate response to her calls for help. This failure mirrors the troubling pattern we've seen in cases like my fiance Cornelius Jackson's wrongful conviction, where systematic issues and lack of accountability have led to injustice. My organization stands in solidarity with Allison's family in the pursuit of justice. And we all call on the community, the Minneapolis Police Department, and lawmakers in Minneapolis to enact real change. Real change. We're tired. We're tired. Black, brown, indigenous people, we're tired of having to come out here and fight for what's clearly our rights. And we're tired, and we need people to act swiftly and diligently on all of these issues. Minnesota nice is not Minnesota nice at all. Thank you.
Next up, Ms. Keefe.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Amadani Keefe. I'm the Executive Director at the Domestic Abuse Project in Minneapolis. I'm here to urge the Commission to review the case of Allison Lucier. Allison was a cherished member of our community, a daughter, a mother, a niece, an aunt, and a person with hopes and dreams just like any of us. Her death has left a profound void in the lives of those who knew her, and unfortunately, there are questions and concerns that remain unanswered. We rely on law enforcement to protect and serve with integrity, transparency, and accountability. When someone in our community dies under suspicious circumstances with a long history of domestic violence and a track record of death threats being made against them by their partner, as is true in Allison's case, it is vital that these cases are investigated so that, at least in death, the victim can attain peace and justice for the harm that they experienced. Trust is the foundation of community safety and cooperation. There are many victims that we work with at the Domestic Abuse Project that do not trust police. And there are also many that say that police absolutely saved their life. And the Indigenous community needs to be able to say the same thing. The reality is that we need both strong community-based resources as well as strong, trustworthy systems for those who choose to seek safety and justice through those systems. A review by this commission is essential for several reasons. First, it will ensure a fair and impartial examination of the circumstances around Allison's case. Second, it will demonstrate to the community that accountability matters, regardless of the complexities involved. And third, it will offer the chance to learn from any mistakes and implement meaningful changes to prevent future tragedies. This commission was established to provide independent oversight and shine a light so that we can see what we need to see to make necessary changes so that we can serve the community in the best way that we can. By reviewing Allison's case, you can offer clarity and reassurance to a grieving community that demands justice and truth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last speaker, we have Howard Dodson.
Evening, Commissioners. Howard Dodson, Ward 2. I went to high school with Jana Williams, and when she shared with me what happened to her niece, I said, this is where you need to be. And I'm disappointed that that letter that we requested that you made action on, that you didn't act on that tonight. I did file a complaint with the OPCR for an internal affairs investigation of Sergeant Heyer, who refuses to talk to Jana Williams. They failed her in life, and now we're failing her in death. Thomas Jefferson wrote, "We have inalienable rights, life, liberty, pursuit of justice. A basic service that our county and city provides is public safety. And when someone is murdered in our community, there needs to be justice." I don't know what's going on between the police chief and the county attorney, but just like the city and the county and the hot potato, knock it off. Figure it out. Charge Chuck Foss with murder because he murdered Allison on February 17th. As a chaplain, I've worked with 100 families after homicide, 4 police departments over 15 years. I've been with families who never get justice. Imagine if you lost a loved one to homicide and you never saw justice. What would your grief journey be? As a chaplain, I want to cite a verse from Genesis 4, Cain and Abel. When he's confronted, he asks, am I my brother's keeper? And God explains, I can hear your brother's blood crying out to me. God can hear Allison's blood crying out to him. Why can't our leaders hear her blood crying out for justice?
Thank you, everyone. We've completed all public comments. The next order of business is reports. I've allocated 10 minutes to each of these reports. We'll begin with the report from the Office of Police Conduct Review, which will be presented by Director Fujisawa.
Point of order. When is the matter of Allison Lucia going to be on the agenda? Where is it going to be? I had suggested it go under reports.
New business.
But it's old business because we passed a motion in November, and my motion was to have it heard under reports.
Can you clarify the motion? Because that wasn't my understanding when she made the motion. Was it under reports?
Madam Chair, I do believe that Commissioner Gurian Sherman had suggested that this matter could be taken up under reports.
Okay, so do you want it to be the first report or after the reports?
I think that would be very nice. I think it would be accommodating the people who are here.
So first reports?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I will just mention in terms of, thank you, in terms of the report, the memo that Commissioner Gurian Sherman submitted, that was submitted to the City Council. We have the report, and we got confirmation from Councilmember Cashman that the report was received. And so I didn't know, if, Mr. Fussy, if you wanted to add any additional information on that, but the memo was sent as directed to City Council to take further action on whatever they would like to do with that information.
Madam Chair, I don't have any further information, but thank you.
Any questions? Commissioner Gurian Sherman.
Thank you very much for that update. I appreciate it. Just to clarify, my task was to submit a draft of a motion. It was pretty detailed, 4 pages with footnote or endnotes. And what I'm trying to find out, was that memo exactly sent on the letterhead of the CCPO, or was something different sent? And whatever was sent, because the draft I sent was not official, I would like to see, and if I have to, I'll make a motion, that whatever was sent to the City Council should be provided to all of the commissioners and should be made public.
That was, the memo that you sent was sent to the City Council members.
Thank you. And so can we get a final copy of that?
Madam Chair, so I'll just start by saying at this body's meeting in August, as you'll recall, and again at the meeting in November of last year and in January of this year, members of the community have used the public comment section of the agenda to raise concerns about the death of Allison Lucia. At the November meeting, a motion was made to authorize the officers to submit a comment on behalf of this body to the City Council requesting that they also put into the request to the City Auditor Allison Lucia's case, along with the case of Davis Maturi. Chair Reeves, on behalf of the CCPO, forwarded the motion that was clipped from the minutes and sent that to the City Council on behalf of the body as she was directed. I do understand there was another statement that Commissioner Gurian Sherman had drafted and submitted. I don't know if that was submitted to the full council or not. I know that Commissioner Gurian Sherman certainly can submit her comment in her personal capacity on behalf of the body. The statement clipped from the minutes, which was adopted by this body, was forwarded as the official statement. I would also note that the City Council submitted its request to the City Auditor for the after-action report involving the Maturi shooting at its meeting on October 31st of last year. That was a request to the City Auditor. As a reminder, the auditor is an independent official of the city who is appointed and reports to the Audit Committee, not the City Council. So the City Council made the request of the Audit of the auditor to consider adding that case of Allison Lucier to that after-action report. That information is found in our LIMS system in file number 2024-01293. I'm happy to forward both that link to the report and the email from Chair Reeves to the City Council that clipped the motion adopted by this body making that suggestion. The after-action report would be reported to the Audit Committee, not to the City Council, if and when the city auditor completes that report. So it would be important to watch the upcoming agendas for the Audit Committee for any movement on that after-action report.
Commissioner Gurley Sherman?
I would like to pause and see if there's anybody else that has any questions before I go on with my next one. I am confused. The motion that was in the minutes is about 4 lines. The motion that I drafted was 4 pages. So what I'm trying to find out is what was sent to the City Council. Just the motion without the memo that I was tasked with writing? If it was changed, that's up to the chair and the co-chair and the vice chair. But we have a right to know what was sent, and I'm going to make a motion that the CCPO and the public be provided an exact copy, not through LIMS, but through the means at our next meeting, of what exactly was sent to the City Council from the chair and the vice chair.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any further discussion? All right. Mr. Clerk, if you could take the roll call on the motion to send the exact communication that was sent to council members.
Commissioner Shanfield.
Abstain.
Commissioner Clement.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith-Klayman.
Aye.
Commissioner Bastick.
Aye.
Commissioner Gurian Sherman.
Aye.
Commissioner Canaday.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Vice Chair Olson.
Yes.
Chair Reeves.
Yes.
There are 8 ayes and 1 abstention.
All right. Next, any further? Oh.
Is it knowing that is the commission on the audit commission that's going to be making actions? Once actions taken, is it possible to have them do a presentation here to the CCPO?
Through the chair, I'll say certainly this body could request the city auditor reports to the audit committee. And so it would be up to the city auditor and the audit committee to decide whether or not the auditor is going to make a presentation to this body. The city auditor doesn't report to this body and has no, direct connection to this body. But if the audit committee or the auditor, I suppose, said that they would or was willing to come make a report, they certainly could.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, I abstained because I wasn't sure about all the details. It's unclear to me about the timing of when we sent the information. And Mr. Gurian Sherman, you said that it took you longer than you expected, so perhaps it had gone, perhaps it wasn't malintent. That's what I'm trying to understand.
I totally agree. What happened in November is we talked about this and how it was going to go back and forth. The city clerk, and thank you, Mr. Carl, provided some clarification on what we needed to do. I said that I would undertake this. I thought I could write this memo by the end of the week. That couldn't be done because I wasn't clear on what exactly we had passed because we didn't state the motion. We didn't have a meeting in December, so I didn't have the advantage of the minutes from that meeting until our January meeting. When I saw the notes from the meeting, I immediately went back to the YouTube video and found what we had talked about and based the memo on that. I did the research. I also met personally with Miss Jana Williams, the aunt of Allison Lucier, and Lizzie Palmer, who had spoken, who represents Twin Cities Coalition for Justice, who have been totally on top of this, to make sure that what I was providing was accurate. I also was in touch with Councilmember Robin Wansley's staff because she chairs the committee that would make the request so that I could find out how it was to be properly addressed. And I ended up sending out an email to the CCPO explaining what that process was and then attaching the memo on January 22nd.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions? All right. Thank you very much. Next up, we'll begin with the report from the Office of Police Conduct Review, which will be given by Director Fujisawa.
Good evening. So just taking a look at our agenda this evening, we'll be just running through some quick updates on staffing with the CCPO. We'll do our usual intake unit updates, administrative investigations updates, and then we'll just do a quick review of panels this past month and upcoming review panels that are scheduled. Currently, we have 12 seated CCPO members, so there are 3 vacancies. Of the 12 seated members, we have 8 members that are eligible to sit on review panels. And those are the review panels are the sessions that review cases from internal affairs and the Office of Police Conduct Review that have gone through the investigative process and are on their way to the Chief of Police for his disposition. These 8 members are eligible based on their training completion and other requirements that are completed in accordance with the ordinance. To fill these 3 vacancies, but also in anticipation of the completion of terms in May, the Clerk's Office, Neighborhood Community Relations, and the Communications team have all partnered for a more robust, more thorough recruitment process that opened this past Friday, I believe. And really, it's in an effort to fill the 3 vacancies currently, but also in anticipation of the vacancies that will arise at the end of the term in May. So really, we're trying to do full outreach across the city. Shanice Watts, our administrative assistant, is already distributing materials across the city. We have really a full court press with the promotional materials and just getting the information out there to the public. Just looking at our intake unit, it's always helpful to take a look at the month-to-month trends of the contacts that our office has. Here you can see towards the end of 2024, there was a considerable spike. And that's in both contacts and complaints. So that, we really see that there is an uptick in reporting alleged police misconduct, which is great. That's what we want to be seeing. We want to be accessible to the public. We want to be accessible to people that feel that has been a violation of policy. But that also does create, a larger body of work for our office, and historically trying to work through the backlog has been a challenge. I think in the January meeting we did highlight that we have completed all cases from our intake backlog, and that means cases of complaints that we received prior to May 23rd of 2024. So all of those cases have gone through our intake process, which has been a huge accomplishment. Since I think the number was 234 cases in intake as of October in 2024. We still have a lot of work to do, though, right? We have 101 complaints that are in queue, and 83 of those are beyond the 30-day mark in intake. So that is something that we're trying to bring down. As we talked about previously, and staffing is moving in the right direction to support this work and to help us adhere to timelines that are outlined in the settlement agreement and potential consent decree. Administrative investigations. So this is the body of work that has resulted from the work in intake and catching up on that backlog. Again, we have the same time period buckets that ALIFA, in consultation with ALIFA, we've helped to establish these. You can see the breakdown of all the cases in the administrative investigations by status, by time frame here. And, the priority for year 1 with ALIFA and MDHR is clearing the backlog. We're making substantial progress. We are really working to identify an appropriate target date as we staff up fully with our investigators and as we really understand what our case clearance rate will be so that we can provide effectively a target date for completion. Review panels. We very much appreciate, I think, as we mentioned in the past meeting, just the adoption of the 2025 CCPO calendar. This has, immensely simplified the logistics of identifying the dates on which we can hold review panels. Obviously, there will still be obstacles, whether that is work schedules, personal accommodations. The numbers here have changed for the upcoming month of February. I will say in January we did have 3 panels, and we were able to hear 6 cases. Coming up in February, I mentioned there are some changes here. We did have to cancel one that was scheduled on the 7th due to a personal circumstance. I will say it is much less of a concern now that we have a standing calendar. There are 4 additional holds throughout the rest of the month for which we can hold panels, including Saturday. I believe it's the 15th. So immediately we're able to kick that case to the next scheduled date and really not have as much concern. There still is concern, right, just because of the sheer volume of cases that are coming in the pipeline. You can see right here, as of last week when this report was submitted, there were 12 cases ready. I have in my notes here that there are 18 now. That's 12 across OPCR and 6 from IA. And I think it's really just important for us to keep moving and to ensure that we, highlight the efforts that have been done, but know that we have to keep moving in terms of hearing these cases, sitting for panel, being, completing training as required, and just really being fully staffed at the CCPO so that we can staff and hold as many panels as possible throughout the course of the year. And with training, this is particularly important as we are looking to fill the 3 vacancies, and then with upcoming new commissioners potentially in the spring and summer, we continue to work with staff of the CCPO, but also staff at the city enterprise with IT and other departments to create sort of self-guided training modules. I think we discussed this previously, but it really gives enormously more flexibility to all of you and to incoming members, as well as our staff who have previously had to schedule and coordinate essentially what are recorded trainings. And so I think this gives it's a much more robust training suite. We're partnering with NACOL and other organizations and just best practice to really deliver the most effective training to equip all the CCPO commissioners to fulfill their requirements based on the ordinance. So we'll continue to provide updates on our progress with IT and others as these are developed and rolled out. So more to come on that at future meetings and future work. With that, I open it up to any questions.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Bostic.
Thank you very much. As you know, I've been asking some questions, and I have some grave concerns about the panel pool. I've got a 2-part question immediately. Is that you were kind enough to let us know that we only have 2/3 of our existing members. We have 12 members, and only 8 of us are currently fully qualified. And for the public record, that means completed all mandatory training and gone through and passed the FBI background check. And I know from personal experience that that can actually be accomplished in under 2 months. And since I am the second newest member of the commission, I simply do not understand why we have a number of our commissioners who aren't ready to go and help us actually perform those panel reviews, because it puts an inordinate amount of burden on the 8 people to do those panels, because they take a great deal of time. So the second part of that question, though, is you were kind enough to provide us with the ordinance, and I'm going to read this out. There must be at all times at least 10 members of the commission who have passed the required background check. So this does rather beg the question, if only 8 individuals out of the 12 are currently eligible to sit on the roads review panels, which we are doing at night, on the weekends, are you meeting that city requirement right now? Do you have 10 people on this commission who have passed the FBI background check?
And just to correct, it's actually the MPD background check.
Right,
That's
and it
the
goes
small
through,
detail.
yeah, okay, all right, we'll just say the background check. You cannot sit on a panel without that.
Correct. And for this, I'll actually, so the city attorney's office, I'll defer to the current standing.
Through the chair, my understanding, if it is correct that there are 8 members, that number is not being reached. I don't think that the remedy for that is to shut down the panels, but to endeavor to reach that number and hopefully to reach a greater amount than that number. I concur that members should become qualified and serve on panels if at all possible. Thank you.
May I ask a question? Oh, you can. You go ahead. Okay.
Commissioner Clement.
Thank you. Is it, to my understanding, if Mrs. Bastick was able to be qualified in the 2 months' time, is it then actual commissioners that are not doing what they need to do to be, like, I sit on panels, so I'm asking, so I've done what I've needed to do that. But I am noticing when I'm sitting on panels that there are people whose names I've never seen on panels. And of those 6 panels in January, I was probably on, I don't want to say all of them, but most of them. And there are names that I don't see that have been on the commission with me for the 2 years that I've been on it. So is it a commissioner thing, or is it something you all aren't offering? I'm confused by that. Thank you.
Again, I'll defer to the city attorney.
Thank you, Director. With regard to that question, that seems to delve into individual commissioners' status, and I don't think it would be appropriate to discuss individual commissioner status at this point.
Okay, then can I ask another question? Can I ask a follow-up?
One moment. We have expired our 10 minutes.
I'd like to make a motion to extend discussion for another 10 minutes.
Second. All right, any discussion?
How about 7 minutes?
10 seems too long.
Okay. I would
I'd even
ask
say
then that
5.
if we don't do a friendly amendment, just to vote how you would like to vote on the motion. So the motion is for 10 minutes. It has been seconded. And if there any further discussion, Clerk Carl?
I would just call for a voice vote.
Voice
Madam
vote
Chair.
is fine. So do 10 minutes, voice vote?
Yes.
Aye.
3? I heard 3. Any noes?
No.
Sounds like the noes have it. So not for 10 minutes.
I would like to have a individual count if we can.
Okay. It might be easier, Clerk Carl, just to call the roll, please.
This is for 10 additional minutes?
Yes.
Commissioner Shanfield.
Oh, if we change the number, I'll vote yes, but I'm voting no.
Commissioner Clement.
Abstain.
Commissioner Smith-Coiman.
No.
Commissioner Bastick.
Yes.
Commissioner Gurian-Sherman.
Yes.
Commissioner Canaday.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith.
No.
Vice Chair Olson.
No.
Chair Reeves.
No.
There are 3 ayes, 5 nays, and 1 abstention.
Okay, that motion fails.
Motion to extend the discussion by 5 minutes.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All right, then motion and second. Let's do a voice vote. All those in favor, 5 minutes?
Aye.
Sounds like we're good. All right, let's do 5 minutes. Commissioner Bostic.
So just to reconfirm then, thank you, Attorney Fussy, the city is in fact out of compliance with its own ordinance then. We do not currently have 10 people on this commission who have passed the background check that the MPD initiates.
Point of information. How many new members has there been in the last year to the CCPO? Like how many vacancies versus new members being added on? Just knowing that I've been here for only a month.
Clerk Carl, do you have the answer to that question off the top of your head?
Within the last year, I know that Commissioners Canaday, Bastick, and Smith-Coiman are the 3 newest.
Stewart.
And how many
I'm sorry.
vacancies in the last year? Do we know? How many people have?
There have been several vacancies, many of which are now filled. There are 3 current vacancies that are still pending.
It just seems to me that given the amount of turnover in the committee, it would make sense that there's not enough people trained yet for panels.
Commissioner Bostic.
Agreed.
We absolutely, knowing that I'm the second newest commissioner, again, I repeat, there's definitely, there has been opportunity.
Point of order. It's really important to understand that it's not only commissioners' effort, it's also your own background. So you might not be eligible to serve on a panel. That might not be of your own volition.
And yes, per the ordinance, it does make an allowance for those to sit on the commission that cannot pass the background check to make sure that they have a good community voice. And so since we don't want to single anyone out, that would be inappropriate on this body of who did not pass the background check. It's very clear that we don't have 10 right now. The city's making an effort to get 10. But we definitely want to make sure the panels continue, and the council members are aware that we have 8 and the ordinance says 10. We want to make sure that we're continuing the the panel so that the communities can get those resolved in some matter. So yes, it is unfortunate we don't have 10. I do believe the city's making every effort to get us to 10 so that we can have what the city ordinance has. Unfortunately, due to the vacancies and things that have happened, this is where we are. But I'm glad the panels are continuing so that we can serve the residents on this panel.
And if I could, Chair, just make a quick note about the time frame. Some of us work multiple jobs, and so just because one person can get the trainings done in 2 months does not mean that that can be applied to everybody else who is on the commission. So just speaking for myself personally.
Thank you. What I would ask, though, is I'm having a hard time seeing everybody, so if you can raise your hand just so I can see you, because I just want to make sure I catch you. And so I'm trying to look around because I can't recognize the voice. Sometimes my ears are clogged. So go ahead, Commissioner Bostic.
I did notice that in the required training, there is one little tiny piece that I haven't found any reference to, but it is absolutely critical. Once you pass your background check, you get invited or should get invited to do the mandatory CJIS training, which is an online training. You have to actually generate a completion certificate. There is no reference to it in any of the materials that I could find. And I would ask that you are clearer on that, so that when, especially for new commissioners, when they look at this list, they understand completely what they have to do. And that, of course, does require that the city generates access to that. And if we could be clearer on that, I think that would be helpful.
Director Fujisawa, did you have something to add?
No, I mean, I think I agree with everything the commissioners have been saying. And to Commissioner Smith-Coyman's point, that is why we are trying to develop self-guided modules, just to increase the flexibility, because we know, and we are trying to, in terms of future recruitment, make sure that we have a representative body. And sometimes that means that you don't have the flexibility of attending trainings during a 9 to 5, or even in the evening, or with childcare. So we are really trying to overcome those barriers. So I appreciate you saying that. And to your point, Commissioner Bostic, yeah, absolutely, we can include explicitly that reference. But I will say that we are going in and closely, managing and monitoring that certification, as it is a critical piece and qualifier for eligibility to sit on panel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gurring Sherman.
I'd like to address the CJIS question. It came up in
Microphone.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Your microphone.
I keep forgetting to do that. I apologize. I want to address the CJIS question, which came up in March of last year, so we're going on almost a year. I wrote an email on April 15th, 2024, expressing my deep concern about why all of a sudden, out of the blue, we are the first independent civilian oversight to be required to take the criminal justice and information system training. I've had to take it in other capacities, and it's never been required. One of the things I'm most concerned about is we were told by Mr. Fussy that we are in violation of federal law if we don't take that training. And one of my questions, one of the things I posed, and the city attorney is here, and I'll be glad to send her directly the questions. What happens to the panels that we did when people did not have the CJIS training? Are they null and void? Are the officers that were subject to discipline being told, are their counsel being told that people were sitting on the panels that did not have the CJIS training? You can't have it both ways. I'd like to finish my thought.
I would ask you to ask.
Point of order, please.
Question.
Yeah.
So let them answer the question, because the time has expired and we asked for 5 minutes. So you asked the question about what has happened to those.
Well, I haven't finished my question. You can't have it both ways.
Commissioner Gurring-Sherman.
That you would require us to take a training out of the blue with no justification, nothing that's been changed, first time ever in the history.
Point of order.
Then not tell our officers who are in those training, who are in those disciplinary proceedings. So when can I expect answers to my questions?
Please mute the mic. The mic has been muted. Who had the first point of order? Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Go ahead, Commissioner Olson.
Point of order, the time has expired.
Okay. All right. The time has expired. I thought I heard someone else. I'm sorry, over here, if I missed somebody. So the time has expired on this discussion. I would ask Commissioner Gurring-Sherman to address any other questions to you. But if you could answer the question that you did hear, since she did ask the question, if you could please answer that.
Yeah, and for that, I will defer to the city attorney's office.
Through the chair, I don't think I have any further comment. I know that the CGIS training is required to access the review panel data on most of the cases that are heard. I don't know what the practice was, if there were other cases in which that wasn't the case, but I can't comment on any individual cases. I just know how the law is set up now, and that is a requirement under the ordinance and under federal law.
Thank you very much.
Can you explain why I haven't received answers to my questions from April 15th, 2024?
Through the chair, I don't know what you're talking about.
Point of order. And I'm sorry, I didn't hear who said it.
I did. Clement.
Commissioner Clement.
Time.
I would ask that you submit any additional questions to staff.
I'm going to submit them to the city attorney because this is
And
serious.
that's perfectly fine,
So you
Commissioner
can
Gurley-Sherman.
expect my email this week. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next item up on the agenda is the Police Department's Internal Affairs Division report. I'll invite Ms. Hastings to come up and present. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. Again, I am Lily Hastings, the Case Manager for Internal Affairs. So tonight we're going to go over just a couple things. We're going to do just a quick update for the 2-100 MPD policy and procedure draft that was sent to the PPRR committee. And then we're going to talk a little bit about our backlog updates since we implemented our backlog plan in October of 2024. And then we're going to go over our current statistics and current trends. So again, just a very brief update. We did receive all of the comments and suggestions from the PPRR committee. So we're reviewing them and processing those suggestions right now as for what we can change. We're still in the process of working through this policy with MDHR and ALIFA and internal concurrence right now. So that's kind of just where that is at right now. We're just reviewing and making implementations as we can. The next part is the IA backlog update since October 2024. So here we have some pretty major progress that is being shown. So this specific graph is the total number of open admin investigations. So as of, September 27th, 2024, there were 112 open admin investigations. As of January 30th, there was 66 open admin investigations, and only 44 of that 66 are backlog investigations, meaning that they're over 180 days old. Our oldest age of intake cases has gone down. That was, something we've talked about multiple months, is getting that down to 30. We need to have our average age at 30, but we'd also strive to have our oldest age at 30 at that point. So as of September 27th, 2024, we had an oldest age of 77 days for open intake cases, and now our oldest age as of January 30th, and my apologies, that's supposed to say 2025, not 2024, for January 30th. Our oldest age is 35 days for open intake cases. The next one, again, is we're likely to see this come down as we're processing through investigation cases, but this is our oldest age of open admin investigations. Previously, back in September 27th of 2024, we had reported that our oldest case was 1,190 days old. As we've begun processing through those investigations and moving them along to review panel and the procedures that follow after review panel, our oldest case now at January 30th, 2025 is 789 days old, and the lowest case after that is about 150 days less than that. And the only other thing I wanted to highlight, my apologies, there is not a slide, but if we were looking at the previous CCPO updates, our average age of admin cases just since last month went down 50 days as well. All right, moving on to IA statistics. So as of January 30th, 2025, we had 20 open intakes. The average age is 27 days old, and our average duration to complete the intake phase is 25 days. Again, that's the under 30 days timeline. For open investigations, this is admin investigations. As of January 30th, 2025, we have 66 cases. The average age is 349 days. That's the point that's lower than about 50 since our last report here. 44 of those 66 cases are considered backlog cases. 22 are considered current cases. 63 of those 66 are assigned, and 3 of the 66 are unassigned. The unassigned cases are current cases that are under 180 days old, and they get assigned out as the investigators are completing their backlog cases, just because we want them to prioritize that work and not, skip ahead and try to do a current case instead. Open cases in expedited disposition. As of January 30th, 2025, we have 116 cases. 83 of those 116 are considered backlog, and 33 of those 116 are considered current cases. And then the last part is open investigation cases in supervisory review. As of January 30th, 2025, this is 36 cases. This does not include any expedited disposition cases that are in supervisory review, only admin cases. Okay, and then moving on to continuing our trending data that we have been providing. So for January, we had 21 incoming complaints, and we had 20 intakes actually completed in January. And again, as we talked about last month, this is kind of building upon each month. It's not just we got 21 in and we only did 20 of those 21. The statistics build each month. This is just our open IA admin cases. Again, we talked about 44 backlog admin investigations, 22 current admin investigations, 83 backlog expedited, and 33 current expedited. And then the last one is percentage of the backlog cleared. Again, we're still sitting at 36%. The reason you'll see that is because that requires us to get all the way through closed final status. So just because we're clearing through our investigation backlog does not mean that we are cleared through the backlog per se, because we have to get it through review panel, chief's office. If a grievance is filed at that point, it has to get all the way through grievance and potentially arbitration if that's filed in order to be cleared of the backlog and finally closed. All right. With that, I think questions?
Thank you. Commissioner, any questions? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner Olson.
Thanks for mentioning the policy review, and it's encouraging that the work that we did on that committee is actually being considered. But I have one question. You mentioned that part of the process now that the group is working on is something, I think you said concurrence. It's going through a concurrence process. Could you explain what that is?
Yeah, so part of our policy updates and review is something called internal concurrence. And that point, I hope Brendan can probably explain it a little better than I can. I can try, and then maybe you can step in if I need it. To my understanding, we do send out our draft policies within MPD leadership in order to get feedback from boots on the ground and leaders as well, right?
Yeah, so Lily's pretty much correct. It's an opportunity for the department's leadership as well as officers to engage and provide feedback on the policy changes that are being proposed.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Gurring-Sherman.
Thank you. Ms. Hastings, is there anything different and in particular less in terms of information that you've reported on in this February report than you have in January or previous months?
In previous months, we've talked about staffing and training, and there just weren't any updates for this month.
And so do you believe that you're providing all the information that is pertinent to us under the ordinance and our supervision role?
Yes, I do believe so.
Thank you. You're familiar with the ordinance that requires, quote, "complaint, investigation, and discipline records anonymized sufficiently to be provided consistent with Minnesota statutes and other applicable law shall be shared with the members of the Community Commission on Police Oversight." We received an email, or at least I got an email from Chuck Turshuk, who says we are in zero compliance of that. Do you believe that since this is shall language and it is mandated to be provided, do we as a commission have to request this information come from OPCR and IA, or should it be happening automatically?
I understand the concern. I did receive the email from Chuck as well, but to answer that question, I would have to defer to our city attorney regarding the shall use there.
So same question. Since the ordinance requires this, do we have to make a specific motion to request what is required under ordinance?
Madam Chair and Commissioners, I don't have any other comments than the other 6 times that I've addressed that. There's been no updates that I'm aware of. I know it's a difficult situation with regard to compliance on this matter. I know there is an ordinance draft of amendments that is being worked on by the city attorney, but I don't have any additional information with regard to this matter, and I know it's been discussed multiple times.
If it's been discussed multiple times and you've given answers, can you simply repeat what you've provided?
I don't have any further comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. We have reached time on this agenda item. Thank you, Ms. Hastings. All right. I'll direct the clerk to receive and file that report. Finally, we have the report from the Police Department's implementation team. I'll invite the implementation team to come up, introduce themselves, and give the presentation. I don't see Commander Wilkes here, but I see, hello.
Lieutenant Robinson, Implementation Unit. And this is Brendan LaFranchi. Go ahead. Yep. Thank you guys for having me here today. We're going to start with just going over, we're going to talk about previous requests, key updates, community engagement, policy, training, health and wellness, and then our next steps. Our previous requests, you guys requested our organizational chart and our first and last names on the organizational chart, so we provided that. Two of the previous questions, I believe in the last meeting, was how many people on average respond to our policy requests? On average, we receive 3.3 comments per policy. Now, that could be deceiving. 3.3 doesn't seem like a lot, but each one of those sometimes typically is a community group, which represents multiple community members. We have 3 policy team members that review all feedback, and they look to integrate that into the future policy. Also, we do officer and supervisor feedback sessions. We meet with the officers, we present the policy, and we get their feedback and what they think, and then we bring that also to our policy team. How do we respond to these policy emails? We're going to cover that in our community engagement update. But so far, we've received over 400 sign-up requests for the policy notifications. Some of the other previous requests, you wanted us to expand on the officer wellness and support. We're developing a peer support team. I believe we have over 15, I believe maybe 18 new peer support team officers. We're also attempting to get officer buy-in by addressing mental health and physical health. We've also are planning an event called the Snowshoe Shuffle, February 15th, 2024. It's been approved by the Parks and Rec. It's going to be held on Lake Nokomis between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. And there's going to be a future flyer in the PowerPoint. Some of the key updates here. One of the concerns was some of the communication to the community. People who don't have Wi-Fi or internet, we're going to provide, or we have been providing, community engagement presentation via just paper copies to people in at the community organizations, at the Park and Recs facilities. Another thing we've done to enhance transparency and enhance visibility is we created that subscriber list for our policies. So anybody can go on the website, subscribed, CCPO is subscribed, and anytime we post anything like an update on the implementation page for policies, email blast gets sent out and everyone gets notified. This is an example of the community engagement step-by-step instructions for subscribing. So if you go to the website and you're kind of confused on how to sign up, we actually have instructions on how to sign up to do this. Our community engagement team also passes this out, paper copies, so community members can scan it with their phone. Also just figure out how to do it so if they have access to a computer, they can sign up for those updates. Our policy update, we're currently working on use of force, mission, vision, values, and goals, stop, search, and citations and arrests, engaging with minors, non-discriminatory policing, EIS, health and wellness policy. There's only a few policies written here, but this is a lot of work. There's multiple pages to each one of these, and going through every single piece of feedback is daunting. It's extraordinary what our 3 policy writers are doing. It's a lot of work, and I give my hats off to them. And so we're actively working on it. This is our plan training schedule for 2025. This is the flyer for the Snowshoe Shuffle on February 15th. We're working with the Minneapolis Police Foundation. 100% of the proceeds benefit officer support and wellness. We're going to be using those funds to purchase health rate variability measurement kits, VO2 max analyzer, and technical wellness heart screenings. Currently, we have a pilot project going on right now where officers have some of that equipment, and they can monitor their stress level and look at what their recovery is like. And so they can adjust their workouts, they can adjust their rest times, and say if they're going to work a part-time shift that night, they actually look and see how their body's recovering, and maybe they shouldn't work. Officer support systems. This is formerly known as EIS. It's going to be rebranding as First Sign. It's EIS, for those that don't know, is Early Intervention System. It's basically designed to give alerts and for officers that might need support. And then a supervisor would get that alert, and they'd evaluate and build a plan with that officer and implement some kind of intervention, and then evaluate. Oh, and also our peer support plan or program, also like I mentioned, we are currently building the team up. We had 21 applicants. I believe we selected 18, like I mentioned earlier. And next steps, we're going to continue to work on that policy. It's really big this first year, and it's a lot of work, like I mentioned, and we're going to continue to refine both our internal and external reporting to our stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just say I appreciate you answering the questions clearly from previously on your slide. Any questions? Actually, I'll step down to Commissioner Shanfield because I haven't heard from much from her today. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the clear information. The layout of the policy is really helpful. One offer you mentioned the 3 folks who are going through the policy very deliberately. We have bandwidth as the PPR and the chair of the PPRR committee. If that is something we could help you with, and to help, we would invite them to come to our next meeting is next Monday, the 10th, at 6 p.m. in the Community Service Building, or Public Service Building, sorry, Public Service Center, the other one.
Building.
Right, the other one. We would love even if one of them could come, and that way we could kind of align our efforts and see if we could help reduce the duplication of efforts, we would be happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Green Sherman.
Thank you. I appreciate the organizational chart. Terrific. I notice there's 24 positions. 10 of them come with names, and then there are, looks like 14 that don't have names attached to them, and then 2 that are open. Of the 14 that don't have names attached to them, are all those open as well? Because the 2 that don't have names say that they're open. So can we get the names of the other 14 people and their positions?
I'd have to talk to my commander about that, but I don't see a problem with it. I think originally we just put the managers on there and their first and last names, and we just put the managers on. So
great.
That's something we can definitely look into.
That'd be great. I also want to commend you for the pages about community engagement and how to subscribe to the implementation updates. I do want to suggest, I don't know exactly who's doing it, but there are some of us who are going to be at the conference this week, and I think this would be an excellent handout to provide at the Community Connections event. People need to know how to sign up and get these, so I'm willing to make that suggestion to the people who are organizing it, but I just want to thank you for that. I noticed the snowshoes shuffle. Is this part of the community engagement that falls under the MDHR settlement agreement?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Are there any plans to partner with community groups to do similar type of fundraising events or events? We just had a lot of people speaking about Alice and Lucia. We know that there are people who have been survivors of domestic violence, family members who have lost people. It would be very good for the police department to be having health and wellness events that also take into account the people who have not been served by NPD in the past, and maybe even presently as well. And I think it would go a long way in showing that this isn't a one-sided kind of thing.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Commissioner Bostic.
Excellent report, and I love the way that you are openly addressing past questions and saying, this is a question we heard last time, here's the answer, love it. I realize that the Department of Justice decree has not been signed yet, therefore it's not officially in place. But having read it, I am wondering, I'm also on the PPRR committee as well, I am wondering if you are being somewhat mindful of potential changes that might in fact impact the policy as you're updating policies.
Great.
I know in some of the, like you mentioned, some of the policies that we working on, we are implementing some of those changes into that policy.
Okay.
Super, thank you.
Thank you. Time has expired on this report. We'll accept the receive and file for the clerk. Thank you, sir. Next, we'll take reports from our standing committees. The first report is from our Police Policy Research and Recommendations Committee. That report will be given by the committee chair, Commissioner Sheffield.
Thanks. How much time on the agenda? 10 minutes. Okay, we'll see if we can speed through. Delighted to hear that the feedback that our group worked hard on went to the implementation unit as well as IA. I also read in the implementation unit's memo recently from the subscription list that whether or not the consent decree will be followed, or whether or not the consent decree is signed, that the contents of that will be followed. I was delighted to read that as well. We will certainly keep that in mind as we review the policies. At our first official meeting in January, we reviewed policy 4223, a set of policies under the 2100s, as Ms. Hastings mentioned, and then the policy series 2500. Those were what we understood to be posted for review, and so we sent in our feedback. In the future, our intention, my intention, is to make sure that our notes get to the Community Engagement Commission so that everyone essentially here will be able to see those, and that it will come back around to our group. So it'll be submitted on behalf of the whole commission, not just myself and the committee. What I would also like to share is it would be really helpful. We would sort of formally invite, as I mentioned earlier, we'd formally invite someone from the implementation unit to join our monthly meetings. It's the same time as this one, the week after, every Monday. I will happily send the dates as well in advance, where we will spend our time reviewing policies, and we are going to go through as much as we can, and if we do it in an order that is helpful to you, that would be ideal. So that kind of collaboration across the implementation unit and the CCPO would be really beneficial to everyone. I would like to invite the other members, because we have 8 minutes, 2 minutes each, if they'd like to add about the experience and sort of anything they'd like to add to the discussion.
I don't really have anything to add, but I do want to thank the clerk and the staff for tremendous amount of assistance on this stuff and helping us organize and present our thoughts way more coherently than we expressed them in our meeting.
Commissioner Green-Sherman.
Point of order, I was going to yield my time to folks on the committee just for now, and then we would welcome questions. Mr. Kennedy.
Commissioner Kennedy.
I'll just make one brief comment to the extent this is something that the implementation unit or anyone else in city staff who may be hearing this could keep in mind. Last month we reviewed, I think, maybe 15 separate policies. For some of them we had red lines, for some of them we didn't. You wouldn't believe how much more difficult it is for us to function as a committee when we're not starting with a clear idea and a shared understanding of the changes as they're being proposed. So, I think we all learned a lesson from it. We'll be trying to solve it on ourselves, but I just thought it was worth sharing for everybody to think about that as you're passing these policies on for public review. I think it's equally true that you're just going to get a better product out of people if we all make sure that there's a clear understanding of what it's being changed from and what it's being proposed to change to.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Bostick.
I would echo what Commissioner Kennedy said, is that anyone that is able to help us, we've got 9 policies that we're going to, I believe, be looking at next Monday. If we could get a red line, I'm not aware that we've been given one. That is enormously helpful. This is really complicated stuff, and it just helps us speed through it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
For a little bit of clarification, thank you, teammates. For a little bit of clarification, the red line were the policies that were posted for feedback on either January 30th or February 2nd. So they were posted, and the implementation unit sent us the red lines directly. That was really helpful. I found on the website that they are also posted under the first policy in that series of policies. So I think, please remind me, we will look at that. But I'm assuming there will only be red lines for the policies that are currently under review. So that's something I would love some clarification on. That would be really helpful.
Okay. All right. Anyone else from the committee? All right. So hearing no other comments from the committee members, opening it up for discussion. Anyone have any questions? Commissioner Green-Sherman.
Yes, I think the January 29th memo is really easy to read, digestible. I can really appreciate having 9 of these in front of us. So I have 2 specific questions. Under the ordinance, we have a mandate that says, quote, "The commission shall review and provide the public with its analysis and recommendation within 120 days of proposed changes to all policies, procedures, and special orders, etc." How are we making this available to the public? I don't think that attaching a report to the CCPO agenda is sufficient to be making it to the public. And I'm not pointing fingers at the PPRR committee. You have enough to do. I think we have not yet tackled this as a commission, and I think it has to be on someone's agenda, whether it's a committee or us as a whole. We need to let the community know we're looking these over and we have recommendations. And I'm not sure what that is, so I just want to bring that up and say we have to tackle that. I also want to say, on my way over here today, I heard on NPR a interview with a reporter who had read the ALIFA report on policy, and there were things to highlight and to suggest that things are going in the right direction, and then there were things particularly on use of force. So again, what I want to know, and I'm not addressing this to anyone in particular, but to us, we have to tackle when ALIFA comes out with monitoring reports, how are we reviewing them and getting out to the public our take on that? The use of force.
Point of order. Can we get a clarification on exactly what the question is, please, and who it's directed to?
Yes, there is no question. It's a comment. I don't have to ask a question. That is not a requirement. I was called on, I have 2 minutes that I can speak to this issue according to the rules. So I'm saying there are two matters that we have to tackle as a commission. How we get this public information out in 120 days, and how do we tackle review of the ALIFA monitor's report with the settlement agreement and hopefully with the federal consent decree.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just want to respond to the first part of that, if I could, because we've talked about this a few times at this body's level, at the CCPO. With the two standing committees, the intention of that process was that the Police Policy Review and Recommendations Committee would meet first so that it could review and provide comment and feedback on those policies, and they would refer their recommendations to the Community Engagement Committee in the next week, so that as publication of that agenda that's noticed to the public, the materials would be included with that agenda, and at the Community Engagement meeting, the committee meeting, there would be an opportunity for the committee to share that information with the public and to take any public comment or feedback on this body through the PPRR committee on its positions on those policies. That would then be reported back to the full body so that the full body could consider the recommendations from its Police Policy Review Recommendations Committee, the feedback gathered through the Community Engagement Committee before making a final adopted position on all of those policies and submitting them within a 30-day window, as we've discussed multiple times, to the police implementation unit. So that was the intention behind that structure. It didn't work in its first time this year. We did have a community engagement meeting scheduled, but for a variety of reasons, that meeting didn't happen. So for those, and I believe, I don't want to speak for you, Chair Shanfield, but we had intended to forward those to the Community Engagement Committee for that purpose. The Community Engagement Committee didn't have a meeting. We did not want to lose the window. And so Chair Shanfield had been authorized by a previous motion by this body to submit the feedback just in case. And so she did that on behalf of the Police Policy Review and Recommendations Committee. Going forward, I believe it is the intention to follow that process where the Police Policy Review Recommendations Committee takes up and makes review and recommendation on the policies as drafted. It's referred to the community engagement policy with notice by the published agenda. The public is asked to come speak to what the PPR committee had suggested and to give its feedback, and then the community engagement committee would forward all of that back to the full body. The full body would review and take seriously the feedbacks from both of its committees and from the public and make a final report. I would also note, Chair Shanfield, you didn't mention this, but it was encouraging, I believe, to hear from representatives of the implementation unit that even if this body were to submit its recommendations outside of that 30-day window, the police implementation unit would accept them. So the pressure to complete everything, as we've discussed many times, within that 30-day window is somewhat alleviated because we were given assurances, and Chair Shanfield may want to speak to this, that even if we were outside that window, the implementation unit would take the feedback from the CCPO, from this body, on their policy drafts.
That's right. It was from the city attorney who kindly attended our meeting, and she said that anything that's submitted to the implementation unit does have to be reviewed, whether or not it's within the window. So that was to your point. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right, time has expired.
If that's wrong, we would like to know. There are people in the room that know the answer to that. So if that is and not the case, please do let us know.
Yes, thank you. Time has expired on this. I'll direct the clerk to receive and file the PPRR committee report. The Community Engagement Committee did not meet this cycle, so there is no report. However, I'll check to see if there are any comments from the committee chair, Commissioner Smith.
Madam Chair, not at this time, but I think Mr. Carl's description of the process would be our intention as we plan for our February 17th
Thank you.
meeting.
All right. That completes the order report on our agenda for tonight. We're up to new business. We have a few items here. First up, we'll have an update on the city's consent decree with the U.S. Department of Justice. I've allocated 10 minutes for this presentation. Here to provide that update is our city attorney, Kristen Anderson. Welcome, Madam City Attorney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, I have with me Adam Szymanski, who's an assistant city attorney in my office. We weren't aware that we only have 10 minutes. We have slides that maybe will go a little bit longer than 10 minutes. But you all are obviously aware we've entered into a consent decree with the Federal Department of Justice. It's a 170-some page document, much of which travels the same ground as the MDHR settlement agreement. Some provisions are in the same nature, but over and above, and then there are some new provisions. And so what our presentation will try to address is really kind of the best hits of the new things. Some of them you'll be like, well, that doesn't seem all that new, but they're the things that we think are most notable about the consent decree. So I'm going to first turn it over to Adam to cover the first few slides.
Thank you and good evening. I'll start off with the community engagement section. The highlights of this section are that we will be integrating a community-oriented and problem-oriented approach to policing. That will include supervisors recognizing efforts for police to engage with the community. Secondly, I would say the highlight of this section would be that for certain categories of policies, like use of force, for example, there will be a 45-day public comment period. This is similar to the buckets in the settlement agreement that have a similar comment period. The next section is use of force. It has a 3-level system, sort of like the settlement agreement. There's some differences there that will need to be addressed. The primary highlight of this section is the levels of accountability, the different levels of review that are added from what the settlement agreement had. There'll be a FIT team, for example, a force investigation team that will be investigating uses of force. There'll also be things like a force review board that will look at trends and analyses, as well as representative samples of certain levels of uses of force. Fair and impartial policing section. The highlight of this section will be that MPD will create a plan to assess how enforcement strategies address public safety concerns and whether they generate significant racial disparities. There is a specific section for interactions with youth. It has certain things like policies and practices for uses of force, as well as requiring specific trainings for how to interact with youth. It will also include, engaging them in some form or another, engaging people with expertise dealing with youth in some form or another in developing those trainings. Lastly, last on this slide is body-worn cameras. The primary highlight for this will be moving from sort of a 30-second audio capture from when the body-worn camera is engaged to now a minute into the past. And this is, video. Sorry, I apologize. Video capture, not audio. And this is in line with what the state troopers do currently. First Amendment, this is a big section that wasn't included in the settlement agreement. It has certain things for dealing with First Amendment events, like if you could imagine a protest or something like that. It includes like an incident commander for a First Amendment event engaging perhaps with the leader of that protest, establishing some lines of communication. There are restrictions on dispersal orders and things of that nature, as well as certain protections for journalists and how they're able to move through the events and things like that, as well as people observing police activity and what they're allowed to do as well. So again, different entirely from or not addressed to this level at all in the settlement agreement, and provides additional protections for First Amendment related activity. I'll now hand it over to City Attorney Kristen Anderson.
The next section I'd like to talk a little bit about is a section that is basically new in the consent decree. In the settlement agreement, there's one paragraph about behavioral health response. It's a very short paragraph with not a lot of meat on the bones. But one of the big features of the DOJ investigation really delved a little bit more specifically into alternatives to policing, and particularly for mental health related calls. So this section in the consent decree is pretty robust. It builds on a lot of the mobile crisis response capacity that the city already has. As you know, we already have 24/7 response in terms of mobile crisis response. But the way that the consent decree really looks at this whole section is in a very interdisciplinary way. So we have requirements for our mobile crisis responder. We have additional requirements for training for MPD. All officers will get more training, and then there will be a sort of special voluntary group of advanced critical incident trained MPD officers and a director in charge of that program. And then in 911, sort of similarly, every 911 call taker and dispatcher will have advanced training on responding to calls related to mental health issues. But within the 911 segment, then there will be, again, an additional cadre of folks within that group that have expert training, so that upon availability, if there is a call, then there will be folks in 911 who have special expertise and can deal or help others deal with those crisis calls. Within MPD, depending on availability, it could be one of those advanced trained officers that goes out to the field. But again, everybody will get additional training. And then there are provisions that specifically speak to this idea of joint response, that there are some calls that do in fact have a law enforcement component to it, and also a mental health component. And so behavioral health specialists and MPD officers are going to be trained together and will respond jointly to those situations. And all of the training that's being done with all of these folks, again, is very cross-functional, cross-departmental. The provisions actually require cross-training with not only with 911, MPD, and the behavioral health folks, but also with the EMTs and with fire. So again, we're having more of an ecosystem type of approach to behavioral health incidents. Another section that has seen some amount of change is the misconduct and accountability section. We still will have, as you're very, very familiar with, the two tracks of OPCR having investigatory authority over community complaints, and internal affairs having investigatory authority over employee complaints or officer complaints. But the protocols will be somewhat enhanced. So there are call-outs for specific situations in which cases can be dismissed prior to investigation, one of which actually includes a situation where an officer essentially kind of wants to plead guilty and accept a punishment, and that would justify not going through the entire review process. There's a very specific list of sorts of offenses that would be eligible for that. And then the investigation process, again, very, very similar to what we have now. I think probably the biggest difference is that at the end of the investigatory processes, the IAD commander or the OPCR director will actually be making recommended findings with respect to policy. And it's 4 options: sustained, unsustained, exonerated, and the fourth that I can't remember off of the top of my head. This is actually in line with best practices, and when those, just really clear for this group, when those recommendations go to the review panel, they are not binding. on the review panel. They're there to try to give some sort of guidance to the review panel, especially to try to, for the civilian reviewers on the review panel to have a little bit more information about what sorts of policies are actually implicated. But the review panel is not bound by those recommendations. The review panel will still get the full scope of the information, will be able to review all of the information de novo, and come up with their own recommendation. If the recommendation actually departs with the recommendation of the director, that's okay, and the review panel will simply have to just document their rationale. Does that mean that I'm done with my presentation?
If I could entertain a motion to extend.
I would like to
10 minutes.
entertain a motion for another 10 minutes for the city attorney's presentation on the federal consent decree.
Second. Acclamation?
Fourth.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you all. Sorry, I'm a little long-winded sometimes. Okay, supervision is another provision in the consent decree. Oh. Actually, Adam is actually pointing out one thing that you will be very interested in, policy development. Adam mentioned before that there are some big bucket policies that get a 45-day comment period, very, very much the same as the settlement agreement. A feature of the consent decree is that, in fact, all of the policies that are required by the consent decree that don't fall under those big buckets still have to go through a review and comment period. So for all of the policies, and you can imagine there are many, many, many policies that are going to be required under the consent decree, and they will all get a 30-day comment period, public comment period. Supervision, this is again, a difference from the settlement agreement. There's a specific call out for a requirement that for supervision, there is what we call unity of command and span of control. So that means that under the consent decree, supervisors are required to supervise no more than 8 officers and be scheduled on the main. I mean, obviously, there's sometimes vacation and things like that, but in the main, supervisors are to be scheduled for the same schedules as the officers that they supervise, so that this whole system really depends on good supervision. So this is a really big feature of the consent decree that's not addressed in the settlement agreement. Recruitment and hiring is specifically called out in the consent decree. The city is required under the consent decree to have a robust recruitment and hiring plan and program. Officer wellness is addressed in the consent decree very similarly to the settlement agreement, and data, right? That's how we show compliance. So that's the very quick rundown of, again, an extremely complicated document that's about 170 pages long. So very, very high-level thumbnail of what I would say are probably the most important differences between the settlement agreement and the consent decree.
Thank you very much for that report. I will ask, what were the changes, of any, for CCPO inside this consent decree?
Madam Chair, the consent decree does talk about the CCPO. It talks about the CCPO being staffed and supported. I think substantively is not very different from what's in the settlement agreement, but it is called out specifically in the consent decree.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Sheffield.
Yeah, would love your guidance as well. I thought there was one piece in the consent decree, and I might have misunderstood it, but that after the panels, that we would hear back from the chief. Is that accurate, or could you help me understand that part a little bit better?
I have to say, Madam Commissioner, I'm going to have to get back to you on that. I don't recall that off the top of my head. I do know for certain that if the chief departs from the recommendations of the panel, then he needs to document that. I don't recall that those rationales go back to the panel. I don't think so, but I can check and verify.
My wondering then would be, would it be accessible to the whole CCPO? Could we learn from when the chief departs? We'd really like to understand that as sort of full circle of feedback.
Madam Commissioner, I think maybe what you're remembering, but what I'm now remembering. So obviously, on individual cases, when there's private personnel data, that can't get back to you. But there is a provision in the consent decree. There's a lot of data provisions that are very high-level statistical sort of data where there will be a reporting on, like, how many times did the chief depart from the recommendations of the panel. So again, you're not going to be able to figure out, well, that was my case or not because of the Data Practices Act, but there will be kind of a high-level statistical reporting, if that's maybe what you were thinking of.
I do recall that being sent to Councilmember Payne as a recommendation for the ordinance. Yeah. Commissioner Smith.
Two brief questions. The first is to clarify, once a panel makes a recommendation, it goes straight to the chief. The supervisory recommendations that come into the panel, it doesn't go back to them for further review before it goes to the chief, does it?
Commissioner, no, it doesn't go back. I mean, it might go back to the supervisor just to sort of check the box, but the supervisor does not change their recommendation or anything about the panel's recommendation. The whole package then gets picked up and provided to the chief for his ultimate determination.
Thank you. And could you also briefly describe the off-duty related provisions in the consent decree?
Yes. So there are a few. Probably the most significant is that one of the findings of the DOJ was that there's sort of an inherent maybe a conflict of interest. I don't mean that in sort of a legal term of art, but the current system allows for subordinate officers to schedule superior officers for off-duty work assignments. So one of the provisions in the consent decree is that that can't happen anymore. So there is a bar on basically scheduling your supervisors. There's, I think, also provisions in off-duty that there's more, again, data collection. There's an hours cap that's actually the same hours cap that exists in the settlement agreement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kennedy.
Thank you for the presentation. It was very helpful. There was already a reference here tonight to some statements that have been made about the city being committed to the terms of the consent decree regardless of what happens with court approval. Is there anything that you can say about where we're at in the process in that issue?
Commissioner, members, so we filed with the Department of Justice a joint motion before the federal court. Judge Magnuson, Paul Magnuson, is the judge assigned to the case. The judge has told us that he needs some time to review the materials, which is, again, very understandable given that it's a 170-page document. But as far as I'm concerned, we have filed a joint motion in federal court. The Department of Justice has not taken any other action. So my go-to right now is that I'm in federal court and I'm fighting in favor of this consent decree. I don't have control over what might happen. I know that we have presented the court with what I think is a really, really good document and a very, very defensible document in terms of asking the court to have federal oversight. If the worst comes to pass and the court doesn't approve it for some reason or something goes wrong, I think you've heard the city say many times, I mean, we are committed to doing the work. We prefer to do the work with federal court oversight, but we will do the work. We have a great monitor in place, and I think the monitor is ready to monitor us doing the work regardless of the situation. But I think that having a federal order is a really valuable thing, and so that's my position.
I would like to just recognize that we do have Alifa here in the room. Director Douglas is in the back. Just want to notify that. Commissioner Bostic.
Thank you so much. I think between your presentation and my fellow commissioners, nailed it. I mean, so many of my questions that after I read the decree the first time through have been addressed. I've got a very specific one for you, and I will follow up with an email. If you've been here for the rest of the meeting, which I think you have, I have a very strong concern about the review panels and the pool, the diminishing pool. And something that jumped out at me, page 100, the city shall require that police oversight review panels must, prior to deliberations, be provided oral instructions on how to evaluate and weigh evidence. And right now, as Director Phillips is aware, we don't have any specific training for review panels, like none. We did have a training that was provided at our December meeting after I had pointed out to Director Fujisawa that I had never received any training, but I was about to sit on a review panel. And so I would be interested, again, I will follow up on email, in your interpretation of what oral instructions. I'm sort of going to guess that it wouldn't be every single panel, but I would strongly urge the city to take that very seriously and follow up with the oral bit. In other words, I would love to see that as a standalone training, a presented training, much like your training.
Commissioner, so I'll give you my interpretation. At the end of the day, it is the monitor who will tell us what this provision means. But I do think what was really intended on page 100 is kind of like jury instructions that would truly orally happen at the commencement of every review panel. So, it doesn't need to be long and it doesn't need to be complicated, but the consent decree lays out the specific things that need to be addressed in terms of not considering anything other than the evidence before you, et cetera. But I think the idea, again, is really like jury instructions that would be given to any jury to kind of, even if you've sat under the other juries before, so.
Okay, we have exhausted the time on this report.
I'd like to make a motion for an extra 2 minutes. I just have couple very quick questions that go to the consent decree, so I'd like to make that motion.
Is there a second?
For 2 extra minutes.
A second for 2 minutes.
Any discussion? Let's do this by acclamation. All those in favor say yes?
Yes.
All right, yes, let's have it.
I don't
Commissioner
expect
Green-Sherman.
I don't expect you to answer these today. I do want to thank you for a terrific presentation. I hope we can get the PowerPoint so that we could go through that. I understand that on either February 6th or the 13th, I'm not sure, you'll be making a presentation to the City Council. And if so, will it be pretty much what you've presented to us?
Commissioner, so we gave this presentation to the City Council already. It was before the subcommittee, MDHR subcommittee of the Committee of the Whole. It was in January, mid-January or so. And so obviously we took a little bit more time during that presentation. So it would be very easy for us to provide that link to you and you can watch the longer presentation.
That would be great. I'm not sure if you're aware that Commissioner Phil Sturm resigned because he had great concerns with what he believes are an unconscionable, basically, conflict of interest. I'm wondering if it can't be done in 52 seconds, but if you could send us something or come back in March and address that. I share those concerns, and none of us wants to go through the many hours of preparing for a review panel, going through the review panel, and then have it compromised. So if you could address his concerns and whether you agree with them or disagree with them, and if you disagree with them, why. And then finally, I want to say something about the 16-hour limit that would be for off-duty and on-duty. I find that incredibly troubling. I don't want to have a surgeon operate on me going into their 16th hour. Or 15th hour. And what that tells me is the Department of Justice lauded this 16-hour limitation in the presentation it gave on January 14th. It tells me that officers are working more than that. So again, if we could get a little more clarification on how such a large number was given that allows police officers to work 16 straight hours in a day. I know you can't divulge the discussions, but what was some of the rationale? It doesn't seem limiting to me, and it's very troubling.
Okay, thank you. We expired time on that. Thank you, Attorney Anderson. We appreciate you. Expect the clerk to receive and file that report. Next is a report about review panel training and scheduling issues. I've allocated 10 minutes for this report, which will be presented by Director Fujisawa.
don't envision this taking the full 10 minutes, but just wanted to do a quick presentation on panel specifically, and some procedures there and scheduling, just with some questions that had arisen recently. So we'll talk about the review dates, the composition, which I know has been a question which is partially addressed earlier, and then a question around case routing, which also did briefly just arise. As we've discussed, the 2025 calendar has been adopted. It includes 46 review panel sessions. You can see the second and fourth Wednesday of every month, the first and third Friday, with a couple of exceptions, right? So we already have had a number, going, I think, back into December, a number of those panel dates where we had 2 panels held concurrently. This is the minimum, the 46 that we're looking at. With the opportunity, with the 8 eligible we have now, with the recruitment to fill the 3 seats and then potential future seats, we are really doing as much as we can logistically and from a staffing perspective to support as many panels as possible. We already do have, as I mentioned earlier, I think the 15th of February is a date where we have 2 concurrent panels scheduled. So that is, a Saturday. That is, the embeddeds from CAO are participating. We have staff that will be there to lead in. We're obviously getting those case files prepared. So we just continue to work with the CCPO and with commissioners to make sure this happens. Because as cases go through, we need the cases to go somewhere, and for panel sessions to be held and commissioners to review them. So appreciate your efforts. Continue to reply to Shanice's polls, because that really helps us plan accordingly and get materials out, ahead of the 7-day lead time that we strive for. Composition of those panels, I think everybody knows, per the ordinance, it is 3 civilian commissioners with 2 sworn members at the rank of lieutenant or higher. As we discussed, we have 8 eligible commissioners to sit on panel per the requirements in the ordinance. The eligible sworn pool is composed of 14 commanders and 18 lieutenants. We have worked with the deputy chief of operations within MPD to set up a rotating schedule of this pool of officers, so that I think it's either a 4 or a 6 week rotation, and then after one cycle they will be staggered, so that those sworn members are not paired up for subsequent panel reviews. And these are scheduled throughout the calendar year that matches up with the adopted calendar. So we are tracking, participation on the sworn side as well as participation on the civilian commission side. And we will have that data, and we will track it internally and potentially can be shared with this body. A question around case routing, and I know this came up previously, and I think it's very clear that recommendations that are made by the panel do come back to the Office of Police Conduct Review, because the Office of Police Conduct Review is the shepherd for those case materials to and from panel. We take the materials, I receive the materials, confirm that a recommendation has been made and that the case has not been remanded. That is the extent of my review. And then those files are saved as a PDF, uploaded to the case file, uploaded to the SharePoint, and those materials are then provided to the chief, his staff, and internal affairs, as well as they are the shepherds of case materials with the chief's office. But at no point is anybody changing a recommendation form or able to do so. So hopefully that clarifies some questions and some ambiguity that was out there. I know during the PPRR conversation, there was some question around that process. At no point is anybody within the Office of Police Conduct Review or Internal Affairs making or has the authority to make changes on those recommendations. And with that, that is all I had.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Bostic.
Thank you so much. As you know, I've been emailing you, and thank you so much for answering all of my questions. I am going to ask you for, I've just signed up for that February the 15th panel, by the way, so it sounds as though there are two back-to-back, when I say back-to-back, two cases, and we just went, some of us just went through a really pretty heavy-duty double case the other day. I would like to ask that because of the enormous amount of review that we're required to do, it's not only the written materials, but the body-worn camera footage, that in an instance where you're going to give us back-to-back cases, that you please give us more time than a week. So you're giving us 7 days right now for a single case. It doesn't make any sense, and nor is it fair on us. And I know that just from my recent experience. If we could get more time for two cases, it was an enormous amount of work. And also, if that consideration could be given as you prepare the materials to the amount of pages of reading we have to do and the amount of footage that we have to look at, and especially if there are multiple officers involved in the incident, because our cases had multiple officers, both cases, and we had 3 different violations in the second case. And every single officer for every single violation has to have a recommendation. And that would be my request. So at least maybe 10 days for a back-to-back case would be great.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Commissioner Green Sherman.
Thank you. I really love the idea of having a separate report on the panels. I think that's very helpful, and I hope we continue that. Again, I haven't read the ALIFA report. I did hear about it on NPR, and one of the things, at least the reporter was saying, is that they found problems with still the backlog in disciplinary cases, and that they attributed most of that to staffing. If that's the case, I have trouble with that. It hasn't just been staffing. It's been training. It's been other things that have been brought up at today's meeting. So if we're going to get a handle on getting backlog cases together, we have to understand that it wasn't just a matter of staffing. We have 3 vacancies, and then we have all sorts of terms that are coming up. And I know it's coming up in the next presentation about recruitment, but it goes to the panels. We are not being honest with the public about what the time commitment is for this commission. And we have an enormous amount of powers that are discretionary. We've taken some on, including, we'll be discussing the police chief's review. But nobody is telling the public the amount of hours that is involved in preparing these cases for review, reviewing hours, sometimes dozens of hours of body-worn camera. We put out a video that doesn't get into this. So I want to know, is OPCR committed to putting out a fact sheet as we're going through this 6-month recruiting period that lets people know what the time commitment is? It's important. We don't want to get people excited about this and then come in here and say, oh my God, I work 2 jobs or 3 jobs. I can't commit this kind of schedule and do work on the Community Engagement Committee and the PPRR Committee and come to the meetings and prepare for that. We have a different mandate than any other commission that I've seen. And we need to be honest about that. So can we get a fact sheet out, and if you need people to volunteer for that, let us know, that really defines the commitment of hours. That is the single biggest question that I am getting from people who are interested all across the city about applying for CCPO vacancies.
No, and I can appreciate that, absolutely, especially with the body of work that's coming. I can look at, in greater detail, the recruitment and some of the details there, if that's explicitly mentioned. I do know in conversations with ALIFA and MDHR on our recruitment strategy for the CCPO, I do believe that there is discussion of a time commitment. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what that number is, so I don't want to misspeak here. But that is definitely something that we are actively working to communicate when having these conversations about what the commitment looks like.
And I'll just add to that, it is a time commitment. The cases look different. as someone who's been here for quite some time and sit on several panels, the time commitment is different depending on the case. But I will say during the interview process, that was extensively repeated over and over, the time commitment, if you want to be able to meet that time commitment when you apply. So, but it would be good for the community to know kind of an idea what it would look like per month. I do believe when we did the interview, the video, I said about 10 hours was what I said per month. I think that seemed to be pretty accurate in terms of what a time commitment for me. But yes, any other questions?
Can we get that right now during this 6-week recruiting period? I don't want to see this. We have an opportunity this week to be giving out information at the Community Connections Conference. Can we get something in writing that will help people understand what the time commitment is, even if it's just laying out all the different roles and responsibilities?
I can see what we can do to put together some materials that would help people make a decision on whether or not to express interest in applying.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All
I
right.
just want to say,
Commissioner Gurring,
I just want to say thank you for a really well laid out report.
Thank you.
Gives us great information.
All the time have expired on this agenda item. So I'll direct the clerk to receive and file the report. The next item pertains to membership and vacancies and will be given by the city clerk. I'll recognize the clerk for that update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hopefully at your seats, you've all received this memo from me. It is titled CCPO Membership Issues. Basically, what I've done is identify the fact that there are currently, as we've said several times this evening, 3 current vacancies. Those are in seats 1, 11, and 12. Those are highlighted on the membership roster that's included on that piece of paper in front of you in yellow. But we also know that end-of-term vacancies are coming in 5 additional seats. Those are in seats 2, 3, 6, 9, and 14. Those seats will expire their natural terms on May 31st of this year. And that reflects that this body is now in its 2nd year in establishing a brand-new board or commission. In order to stagger the terms, we divide the board up randomly by drawing lots and assign a first 1-year term and a first 2-year term to the board. Half seats are 1 year, half the seats are 2 years. So the first half of those initial terms have expired and new members have been appointed. The second half of those members who were initially appointed to a 2-year term, those terms will expire in May of this year. Going forward, all appointments will be for a full 3-year term. So once established, the term is 3 full years. You can see I've highlighted in blue on the membership roster those additional seats that will expire in May of this year. So as has been noted, it is our intention to leverage this current 6-week recruitment campaign to first fill the unexpired portions of the terms for seats 1, 11, and 12 through May, and then to have the pool of potential applicants available to fill all of the vacancies that will be occurring at May 31st for beginning terms of June 1. I've been in correspondence with Commissioner Bastick over the last several days about appointments, and so took the opportunity to capture some of her questions to fill in the rest of the details that are on page 2. I would highlight for your information that I've included a link on this document to the CCPO's board details page in LIMS. For the public, I would say you could get to this page by typing into a browser LIMS, that's LIMS, .minneapolis.mn.gov/boards/CCPO. That is the home page, for lack of a better term, for CCPO. And in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a box that says Apply Now, 8 vacancies. If you click on that box where it says Apply Now, it will take you to each of the seats that I've just listed. It will give you a chance to click on the seat that you wish to apply for and allow you to submit your application now through, I believe the recruitment period ends March 16th. So now through March 16th, we opened it last Friday. We are conducting that 6-week recruitment period. And on the back of the memo, I would say, again, we've done an extensive recruitment effort. There was a video that was produced. There's a website on the city's main page that talks about the CCPO. Appreciate the chair and members who participated in the video to promote the CCPO. Members who are current members who wish to be considered for reappointment will still need to fill out an application form. The policy on all of our boards and commissions is that whether it's a first-time appointment or a reappointment, everyone has to fill out an application form. So again, if you are in currently one of those seats that I've named, you will have to fill out an application form to be considered for reappointment at the appropriate time. I will also note that for each term that's served, it's sort of like elected office. For every appointed term, each commissioner will have to complete a new oath of office, which is required under state law and city charter. You'll have to complete a participant agreement, and you'll have to complete the required trainings, which includes the orientation and the mandated code of ethics training that all board members are required to do. I am not sure, as I indicated in my memo in response to questions that Commissioner Bastick raised, about trainings mandated by the ordinance for CCPO members. So that would be a question for the Civil Rights Department and or the City Attorney's Office to address. My assumption is that those will be an ongoing series of trainings throughout the year, every year, to make sure that commissioners have any trainings, whether that's a re-upping of an existing training or a new training. And that training schedule is managed by Director Fujisawa and his staff in the Office of Police Conduct Review. I also know that Director Fujisawa referenced the fact that the recruitment process that we are putting in place for this body, giving its high-profile stance and the sensitivity of the issues that it deals with. Commissioner Gurian-Sherman correctly stated that this board is unlike any other board that we have. The director has submitted that proposed recruitment policy to MDHR and ALIFA for review. I'm not sure what the status is on that, but just so that you know, that has to be also reviewed and approved.
Thank you. And if the Commissioner would just allow me 10 seconds to just say, we encourage all community to apply to the open positions, and I appreciate the staff making sure they get diverse candidates and going out into community to make sure we fill the commission. Thank you. So I asked the clerk to receive and file that report. The next item we had up was for the police chief's performance evaluation.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
On this one, I don't mean to cut you short, but I know we're running out of time.
Yes.
I had a chance to speak with Commissioner Barnett about this, and I know that you had had a conversation with him, and that Commissioner Barnett had committed to you that he would be here tonight to discuss this issue. I'm sorry to have to report on his behalf. There have been some things that have come up just in the last 48 hours, and that was not possible for him to be here tonight. And I know I facilitated some discussion between the two of you, and that you indicated you would be willing to accept moving this issue to the next monthly meeting in March.
Yes.
I think that's March 3rd, just so we're all on the same calendar, but that it would be on the agenda in March. And he understood that and will be here in March and asked me to convey on his behalf his regrets for not being able to be here tonight.
Yes, thank you very much. All right. So we'll have that agenda item for the police chief's performance evaluation discussion with CCPO on March 3rd at 6 p.m. in this chamber. With that, Commissioner Gurian-Sherman?
I'm sorry, can I ask one question? I really appreciate that you letting us know, or you let me know that I had asked for the agenda item about the ordinance. Will that be something, does the city clerk or anybody else know, will that presentation on revisions to the CCP ordinance be done in March, or is it going to be delayed because of the federal consent decree?
Madam Chair, to Commissioner Gurian-Sherman's specific point, I am not sure whether or not the City Attorney and Council President Payne are ready to present that. I do know that it is topmost of their mind as they think not only about the city progressing through a potential consent decree and getting that done, which is top priority, that the changes in ordinance, which address many, as you're well aware, many parts of that ordinance are being prioritized, whether we can bring forward changes sort of piecemeal to get it done faster, or whether we do a holistic change. And so I know that those conversations are happening between the City Attorney and Council President Payne. I don't know and can't speak to whether or not that will be ready in less than a month, which would be for the March 3rd meeting.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we've completed all items on our agenda for this evening. Without any objection, the commission stands adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone.